All right, welcome back to Queen City Corals. We are back here at the shop and we are ready to post part 2 of our tour of the entire show at Reef-A-Palooza. This was a massive show and took us quite a while to get edited and voiceovered, but I hope you guys enjoy this. If you haven't seen part 1, you can check that out up here. Without further ado, let's jump into the video.
All right, guys, so first up we have BSA Corals. Ben has over 20 years of experience and he lives in Arizona. They specialize in high-end coral, and as you can see from these acanthophilias, they definitely have a ton of fire pieces. These rainbow acanthos are some of the nicest I've ever seen, and honestly I've never seen anyone with this many acanthos at one time. They have an online website where they have tons of these products available. You can see these trachees have some beautiful pink coloration to them. There's also some nice encrusters that have some very unique coloration. You can see some grafted montes there, as well as some other rainbow montes, some mushrooms, along with a couple of nice zoas here. There's even more zoas on this right side, some acans, some rainbow acans, as well as some Asian acans. You can see there are quite a few different zoa varieties that he's got, a lot of high-end ones. He's also got some of these rainbow chalices on this right side here, and a couple of ganies as well. On this rack were some of the Euphilia, some of the hammers, and a couple of framers on there. Next up we have RVA Corals. Chris has 8 years of experience and is located in Richmond, Virginia. They have an online store and they specialize in zoa, but they also grow out an aquaculture of a ton of different species, like those frog spawns up front and the trumpets. See, they have a nice chunky acantho in the back, and some of the zoas that they're known for. These little combo rocks are pretty cool. He kind of glued these on and grew them out to cover the rocks with a bunch of different colors, and I really love doing this with zoas. These were really the only ones I saw at the show. They were really unique. You can see some of the chalices that he aquacultures here, a lot of different varieties. Some of the encrusters, so he's got Stylistinellas, Leptostreas, Hydnophoras, Favites, as well as some Cyphastrias, and some more zoa frags. There's also some SPS frags up here, some Digitatas, some Montiporas, some Bernardoporas. You can see he sold quite a few zoanthids at this show, and there definitely were a lot of nice varieties and a ton of really chunky frags. His stuff, because he grows it out, is usually a lot chunkier. Next up we have iFragate Corals. Eric has been in the hobby for over 10 years and is located in Florida. He has an online store and specializes in zoas as well. Now, if you've been to a lot of shows, you've probably seen iFragate. They go all over the country and always have one of the best selections of zoas that are always super chunky and healthy. There are a bunch of different varieties here, as you can tell, but there's also a few other corals. You can see some encrusters on the left side there, some Samicornas, some Leptostreas, as well as some Galaxias here in the center with some nice coloration there. But the focal piece of his tanks are definitely the zoas. You can see all the nice chunky frags, and he usually has really great deals on these guys. You can see some of the higher end ones in this right tank, and there are not a ton of duplicates, which is nice to see. There's a lot of varieties, and he has some very interesting morphs of certain zoas, like some of the grandest pallies. I actually picked up a few from him down in Aquashella, Florida, and some really beautiful mushrooms. You can see that Magic Carpet has some fantastic coloration, and of course more zoas all throughout here. There's some Sunny D's, some more Cyphastrias and encrusters there, all kinds of salted agaves, blue lagoons, fire incinerators, some gobstoppers, and next up we have Aquatic Reef Design. Now, they have been open for 9 years now, and they are located in Ocala, Florida. They are a saltwater focused reef store, and as you can see, they also brought a ton of different fish and invertebrates to the show, along with some corals. You can see they had some pretty cool tangs and wrasses in this tank. The red chorus wrasse there has some fantastic coloring. In this tank were some Diablo Diacerius, some acans, some mushrooms, a couple of different Favia frags there, some Blastos, some Vivida Blastos, some Roletti Blastos, as well as the common Wellside Blastos. Nice Scully in the back there, and some more acans. These frags were super chunky and happy. I noticed a lot of people at the show pretty much all had really happy corals. There weren't a lot of closed up corals, and everything seemed to have traveled well. You can see all these ganies are nice and open and happy, and some elegances in the back there. A nice variety of different colors of Ganioporas. These green ones are really cool. They had kind of a little bit of rainbow yellow in the center. There were some Barnardoporas as well, which I like to see. I'm definitely a big fan of the micro ganies, as well as some of the encrusters over in this tank, some Cyphastrias, some Leptoceras, some Leptostreas, some of the different varieties there. Also had some leathers in the back, and some of the different encrusters here. A lot of different varieties of Cyphastria, as well as some Astriopora, and some more long polyp leathers in the back. You can see some chalices and favias here, as well as some of the favites, some little hammer guard in there, some Hydnophora in the back, and then this side was pretty much all SPS. So some bird's nests, some acros, some stylos, some grafted digis, some stylostenellas, some montiporas. Really unique looking wilsoni frags here with that green and bluish color. Some nice favias here. The colors on these guys are super unique. This little anglerfish was super cute and had really cool coloration to it. Next up is Reefworks. John has been open for over 15 years and is in Austin, Texas. He runs a service company and specializes in aquaculture at SPS. If you've seen some of our other videos, you've probably seen him. He was at Reefstock Denver as well as Reef-A-Palooza Dallas, and he brings a ton of aquacultured sticks. He's got a lot of display tanks back at his house where he grows all these out, and he has super chunky frags. They're always super happy, great polyp extension, and they have fantastic coloration. They're all super bright. You can see he's got some grafted digis and some grafted Montipora setosas here, as well as all kinds of different acroporas, tenuouses, milliporas, smooth skins. He really enjoys some of the weirder sticks, which is nice to see, especially for me. I like to see unique pieces that I haven't really seen before, and he definitely brings a lot of those. There's even some of the pink Cadillacs, some of the rainbow loom. There's his grafted college fund millie there, which is a really cool piece. That's a grafted millie similar to the rainbow splice. He also has these neon green bird's nests, some more stylophoras, digitatas, some slimer acros, as well as a couple anemones in the basket there. But he definitely brought a ton of huge sticks. Next up is Aquarium Specialty. They are located in Columbia, South Carolina, and Scott has over 30 years of experience. They are a retail store that specializes in dry goods, and they actually ship all over the country. We order a lot of dry goods from them just because it's super quick to get it, and they ship it really quickly. They brought some zoas, some encrusters like some Cyphastrias, as well as some SPS. You can see they had a bunch of different zoa frags, all kinds of colors there, as well as some of the mandarin zoas, some mushrooms up front there. They also had some Duncans and some Blastos, some Montes. They had some of these brains, as well as a couple of Colorado sunburst anemones. Had some really great coloration to them, that reddish orange coloration with the almost yellow-like tips. They also had some Neglectus and St. Thomas mushrooms in the back there, along with some bubble corals, some Wilsoneyes, and this really cool fused frog spawn. They also had some Acanthophilias and some torches. You can see some Grales back there, some black lights, some cotton candies, as well as some Acroporas on that rack there. They also had some rainbow chalices down low, some ganies, and some 8-can mini colonies there. You can see some of the SPS frags they brought, as well as some frog spawns there, and some Wilsoneyes. They had this really beautiful Wilsoneye. The water was a little choppy, so it's hard to see a little bit. But you can see a bunch of Scullies there, and of course they had to complete the trifecta with the hammers. Next up is Speed Reefer. Mike has over 10 years of experience and is located in Miami, Florida. He specializes in high-end SPS. If you're into higher-end sticks, you've probably heard of him. But he also had some pretty cool acans, some chalices, some zoas, a lot of higher-end pieces. You can see some ganies on that right side there that he aquacultures as well. You can see he's got a few different types. You can see some Acropora colonies in the back there, some really nice coloration to them, and some great polyp extension. You can see the RRC Candyland Acropora there, as well as some of the higher end sticks. Now he's got a ton of different pieces that get pretty expensive, but people who are into high-end sticks definitely love this booth just because he had a lot of stuff that's a little harder to find, and because he grows it all out, you can tell it's nice and happy, very fluffy, and doing really well because it's all aquacultured rather than just wild. You can see these pieces were super fluffed up. There's some rainbow splice there, a nice mixed frag. Sometimes they'll get a little bit more of one color, but that one was pretty evenly divided. See some Raja Rampage chalice in the back, as well as some hammers and torches on this rack here. In here was a massive Chicago sunburst anemone. That thing was absolutely ginormous. It was about 12 inches across, and I'm sure that thing opens up even bigger. Next up is Epic Aquaculture. Bill has been in the hobby for over 20 years and is located in Phoenix, Arizona. They specialize in SPS and have an online store. You can see that tank was full of rock flowers, but you can see why he specializes in SPS. There's a ton of different pieces in here, with prices starting out at just $15, you can't really go wrong. In this tank were some of the torches on this left side, as well as you can see a Holy Grail Micromusa there, some Holy Grail torches, and some OG bounces there with some nice fat bubbles. They were really chunky. And here was a beautiful rainbow bubble tip anemone. Next up is Addictive Reef Aquaculture. Lewis has 10 years of experience and is also located in Miami, Florida. Specializes in zoas and has an online store. You can see he's got a ton of different zoas here that range from, you know, sort of normal beginner zoas like some of the JF Sunset to some of the white zombies, which are a little more mid-grade, a little more expensive. But he also had a ton of clove polyps and that anemone back there. You can see some really great color from these clove polyps. They're definitely grown in captivity. In this other tank, you can see why he specializes in zoas. He's got a ton of super chunky and happy frags. He's got a bunch of different varieties, some watermelons, some goblins on fire, some mind tricks, some wolverines, rainbow incinerators, some yellow brick roads, some utter chaos, as well as a few different mixed pieces, some SPS, some leptostrayas. Next up is Jay's Exotic Aquatics out of Staten Island, New York, which is definitely quite the drive for Reef-A-Palooza, but I'm sure it was worth it for him. They specialize in euphilia, and Justin over there has been open for about 2 years now. They were also at Reef-A-Palooza last year, and I guess it was pretty good for them because they made their way back, even on that pretty far drive. You can see they definitely have a good assortment of euphilia, some torches, some ganies as well, some hammers, and some frog spawns, of course. This tank had a bunch of different torches in it. You can see some of the ASD Holy Grails out with some fantastic extension. Definitely some of the happiest torches at the entire show, with sweepers going out as much as like 4 or 5 inches. This was towards the end of the show, so a lot of their pieces have been sold. But next up, we've got Frost Corals, who has been to, I think, almost every show that I have recorded. Frost has been in the game for 21 years and is out of Cleveland, Ohio. He just does coral shows year-round, and as you can see, he brought some really cool sea whips. Over here are some leathers, some sun corals, some trumpets, as well as some gorgonians here, the blueberry gorgonians on this right side, which I'm sure were pretty popular. In the other tank over here were some leptostrayas, some Blastos, some Zoas. You can see there were some plate corals in the center there, as well as some different Sympodiums, some Ganies, some Encrusters, some Zoas on this right rack. And Frost, he's always got some really great prices. All these Zoa frags are just 15 bucks. In this tank were some of the $25 frags. You can see some mint pavonas, some Duncans, some leptostreas, some clove polyps, as well as some of the different varieties of clove polyps here. You can see some fireworks, some neon green clove polyps, as well as some mandarin clove polyps up front there. They make a really cool mixed garden. On this rack were some of his acans. You can see there's a bunch of different colors, some greens, some pinks, some reds, some blues, a lot of different varieties. Some of the frost skirts there that are super popular. In the next tank were some of the Trichophilias. You can see they had some really nice pinks, some of the bigger pieces like some of the big acan colonies, as well as some Blastos. You can see the Scolies here on this right side, some bleeding apples, some war paints, some different reverse bleeding apples, all really nice and fat and chunky. This one was really nice. It had this yellow streak in it that was really unique. Haven't really seen one like that. In this tank were some of these Chicago Sunbursts, and these guys were fat and happy. They were between 5 and 10 inches and really fluffed out. This rack had some of the $35 Zoas, and as you can see, they're a lot chunkier than some of the $15 Zoas, and some different mixed color varieties in there. A lot of nice pieces, some of the big grandest pallies there that I really enjoy. These are some more clove polyps, some dragon sulfavias, as well as some jack-o'-lantern leptos. Over here were some mushrooms in the front, and then some Blastos, some acan echinatas, some Favites, some more Zoas, and then in the back were these bigger Gani colonies that were nice and extended. You can see the Cinerina and dragon sulfavia there with some mushrooms up front on the rack. This rack had some bigger Zoas, some rainbow acan frags, as well as some Favia frags. There were also some black widow anemones in the back there with some nice coloration to them. There were some rainbow chalices, some more Favias, and then some acans over here. These were the rainbow acan frags, and as you can see, they were smaller, but they definitely were still fat. There was some nice coloration to them, and all the polyps were nice and big. There were some elegances on this rack, and of course some rock flowers here in the center. The first coral I ever actually bought at a show was from Frost at Reef-A-Palooza over 6 years ago, and it was actually a rock flower. He had a ton of them at the time, and they were all really nice and colorful. Over here he had some torches. There were quite a few varieties, and this really cool plate coral in the back with almost yellow tentacles. There were also some rainbow bubble tip anemones. Over here in the center, you can see a bunch of different colors from those guys with some nice red in the tips there. Over here were some Favia colonies, as well as some frog spawns in the back there, and some hammers and frog spawns up front. Next up is Bull Reef Aquaculture. They are operated by Dr. Ronnie Bull, and he has over 40 years of experience. They are located in upstate New York and have a commercial coral farm and 100% sustainable aquaculture. And they are also a wholesaler. You can see he brought, of course, his farmed pieces, some Montes, some Favias, some Acroporas, and Monteporas in the back there, as well as some more acros on this back rack with some encrusters up front here, some different Cyphastrias and Zoas. He also had some leptostreas, and of course some different Anacroporas, some bird's nests, some chalices, as well as some Porites, and a couple of different Duncan colors and some trumpets. Next up we have Tierra Sea Aquatics. Tristan has over 10 years of experience and relocated from New Jersey down to Charlotte, North Carolina a few years ago. He is a local store here in Charlotte. He has quite a few different varieties of corals. You can see some acanthos and some indophilias, some cinerinas in front of all the different acroporas, the SPS. He's got nice and chunky frags of in the back there. All different varieties and colorations. Quite a few different pieces there. On this rack were some of the acans, some nice chunky frags there with some more acanthos and cinerinas. In this tank over here were some rock flowers next to some of the elegances that he had brought. The ones up front had some really bright green coloration that was nice to see. Next to some of the trichophilias on this left side, some different colorations and varieties there. Some reds, some greens, even a little bit of pink. On this rack were some of the Blastos. A ton of different colors and varieties. You can see some of the Black Widows, some of the Ironmans, some different Blastomusa vividas, which are going to be the bigger polyps. You can see he's got a bunch of different mushrooms here, some Forest Fire Rhodactis up front. There are so many because they grow like a weed, a really fast growing mushroom. You can see some of the Acan Maximas up front there, some Symphilias in the back, which are a little more unique to see, a little more uncommon. In this tank were some of the Acanthophilias, some long polyp toadstools, some Acan echinatas, some chalices, some anemones floating there, a lot of the bigger pieces that are a little bit chunkier colonies. This tank was full with some of the bigger hammers, some of the wall hammers. On this right side were some of the branching hammers and some of the frog spawns. You can see in the back there, and then up front were a lot of Aussie hammers with a couple of Indos mixed in. On this rack were some of the torches, some dragon souls, some cotton candies, some green tip torches. You can see there's some Indophilias in the back there. Some more torches up front here, some gold torches, some more cotton candy torches, a couple of ASD Holy Grail torches, and some other Holy Grail torches varieties. On this right rack were some Hammer Gardens. You can see he's got a mix of different pieces glued all onto one stone. Next up we've got Luis Reef. He has over 10 years of experience and is from Easley, South Carolina, so just a short drive from us here in Charlotte, and he goes to most coral shows all over the country. You can see he's got some nice encrusters here, some Acan echinatas, some chalices, as well as some hammers on this rack here. You can see there's all different types of varieties, even some frog spawns, and some torches as well on this rack. Some purple torches, some gold torches, some neon green torches as well. Nice variety of different pieces on that Euphilia. Also got a massive chalice here, a couple of them with some really nice color to them. A bunch of different trachees in the back here, as well as some plate corals, some scolies, some cinerinas, some Symphilia up front there, and some more trachees and Acanthophilias in the back. And these guys were absolutely massive, some of the biggest at the show for sure. Nice anemone there. And some of his other pieces on this rack were some mushrooms. See some Yumas, a couple of balanced mushrooms, some Recordias, as well as some Rhodactises. On this rack were some of the Gonioporas and Alveoporas that he had brought that were all pretty nice and happy. On this rack were some of his Zoas. He had some Bam Bams, some Rastas, some Daisy Dukes, some Rainbow Incinerators, as well as some Bob Marleys, some JF Stargazers, and a few different varieties there. He had some Grandis Pallies, some nice fluffy Acans, some Xenia, as well as a couple of Acan mini colonies there. Next up is Pop Corals. John has over 40 years of experience and is located in Brooklyn, New York. He specializes in Euphilia and goes to coral shows all over the country. I know he's been to Reef-A-Palooza pretty much every year, as well as some local shows in Charlotte as well. He had brought some nice SPS, as well as some Acans, some Zoas, a lot of different varieties of coral. You can see some of his torches here. He had already sold quite a few. I recorded this section towards the end of the day on Saturday, and so he was already missing quite a few pieces, which is good to see. On this rack were some Bernardoporas as well as some Alveoporas and a couple of mushrooms up front with that Space Invader Pictinia and a couple more mushrooms. In this tank were some of his bigger pieces, so you can see the wall hammers there, some acans, some Blasto Merletis, some Lobos in the back with some Scolies, some Acanthophilias, some Bower Bankies, a lot of really colorful pieces. You can see he had a ton of Scolies up front here with a bunch of different color varieties. He had some Trachees as well as a couple of Zoa Combo Rocks, some more Acanthophilias, a nice Lobo in the back there, really cool blue and green Bower Banky, some more Acanthos, and a couple more plate corals up front here. This next tank had a ton of different Zoa frags. As you can see, this thing was absolutely full, and that's after they had already condensed their rows from all the Zoas they had sold in the morning. On the rack to the left, you had some Acans as well as some Cyphastrias, some Favites, some more Zoas in the back there, and a couple of Duncans. You can see here he had some of the Sea Whips or Gorgonian fans with some nice colors, and some clams in the back there, some Durasas in the back, and Maximas up front with a little bit more color, and then some couple of bigger Maximas in the back. And this was some of the inverts, so he had some shrimp and some pretty cool starfish. Next up, we had Badgerland Saltwater. Jeremiah has 13 years of experience in the hobby and has been open for 5 years. He is all the way out of Wisconsin, a pretty far drive, and I know the people who grabbed some of the deals at his tank definitely appreciated making the drive. His favorite coral is zoanthids, but as you can see, he brought a ton of variety. You can see some encrusters here, some Stylistonellas, some Leptostreas, some Favias, as well as some different Duncans. You can see this really cool looking Scolie up front there with some torches and frog spawns and hammers over here on this rack. That Scolie was definitely one of my favorite at the show. You can see it had some splatter frog spawns along with some pink ones. In this tank was there's more Zoas and Favias and a couple of chalices in the back. Some more hammers, as well as you can see some nice Holy Grail torches there. He also had some bigger pieces up front, like this Blasto. It had some nice coloration to it. He had a couple more Duncans in the back there, some mini colonies. And next up is Radiant Reefs. As you can see, they brought a ton of different corals. They had some Zoas and Pallies on this right side. And then in the center, they had some of their hammers and frog spawns, along with a few different torches. They were one of the only booths to bring a lot of multi-headed frags. You can see they also had some clams up front there, along with some Goniopora mini colonies there that were a little bit chunkier. You can see the hammers had multiple heads. This really cool Endophilia that was icy blue with like bright pink. That was super unique. Also had some pretty cool Scolies and Trachophilias up front here that were all a little bit larger. The left side of this tank had some Slimers and some Encrusters. In the other tank were some more Encrusters. You can see a couple Chalices, some Favites, some Leptostreas, as well as a couple of different Blasto Merletis in the back there, which were a little unique in their coloration. You can see some more Zoa frags here that were nice and chunky, as well as some Clove Polyps up front here, some of the Firework Clove Polyps. Some really nice Rainbow Chalices, super bright pieces there, as well as some Rainbow Montes and a couple more Chalices in the back there, a couple of Acan Echinatas, and some more Blastos and Favias over here, some Favites as well. You can see some nice coloration on those guys. On this rack were some mushrooms and some more Favias and Favites, some Symposium in the back there as well. Next up is Exotic Aquatics. They are operated by Chris, who's been in the hobby for 6 years. My favorite piece was definitely this grafted torch with fantastic coloration, and you can see really unique piece there. There was a couple of them at the show. Coral King also had one, and this one was also really cool. Now, they are located in Shreveport, Louisiana, but they're actually moving to Orlando in a couple of months. They specialize in all kinds of corals. As you can see, they had some really nice chunky colonies. So Leptoceras right there, some Favias, some Acanthophilias. You can see they had a nice Acant colony there, along with some Favias, some more Acans, some different encrusters, some Cyphastrias, some Duncans, some Stylistinellas, a couple of Leptoceras, as well as some Chalice colonies up front, a little fox coral there as well, and some more Favias. In this tank was another mix of different corals. You can see he had some hammers and frog spawns in the back there of this rack. There were some mushrooms on the back there along with that mushroom rock, along with some blueberry gorgonians and some more Favias. Up front was a nice UFO scolie with a big Trichophilia there and a couple more mushrooms. As you can tell, he was pretty cleaned out by the end of the day Saturday, which is really awesome to see. There's also a couple more trachees up front there that you can see, and this whole rack was 20 bucks. You can see zoas, some Leptostraeas, Leptoceras, some Cyphastrias, some Stylistinellas, and even some mushrooms and leathers on there. Again, this show did have some really great deals to be had, which is nice to see at a larger show that usually will tend to be a little bit pricier, but there was definitely a little something for everybody here. This really cool chalice was definitely one of my favorites. Next up is Josh Pork Sandwich Zoas. If you're a Zoa collector or an art collector, you've probably heard of him. He has some really nice prints available of his beautiful Zoa collection. You can see here he's got a ton of different Zoas, all different kinds of varieties. He definitely has one of the most extensive zoanthid collections, but he also has some really nice rainbow chalices that he grows out, some nice Favias as well. On this front rack, in the back rack were some clove polyps with some nice coloration, a lot of the mandarin clove polyps there. Not a massive booth, but he had a lot of nice artwork that I wasn't really able to showcase. Next up is the fish tank, and Brad, Mike, and JJ run that operation out of Daytona Beach, Florida. They are a retail pet store, and as you can see, they had some pretty cool corals. They had these nice avatar chalices in the back, which are nice and chunky, some Pictinias, some Cyphastrias, as well as a bunch of different mushrooms. You can see some zoas, as well as a mix of encrusting corals on this rack with a couple of chalices. There were some acros on the back, as well as some more chalices. These are the Goldmeister chalice, which is definitely one of my favorite. Some Monteporas, as well as some Leptostraeas and Leptoceras. Some Ganis and some Zoas on this rack with a couple of nice Favias as well. And some super fluffy Goniopora. They also had these really unique suspended corals that were grown out on these little pockets of air in these glass tubes that were encrusting and covering them, and really gave it a good look. Next up is Trash Panda Aquaculture. Joe has been in the hobby for 35 years and is located in Cocoa Beach, Florida. You can see he has a nice variety of corals, some Ganis and Zoas in this tank, with some clams in the back there, along with a couple more Gonioporas and some torches, a few acans, and some other Favias. They've got an online store and also go to a ton of shows all over the country. In this tank were some nice chalices. You can see that big colony there. Some chunky acanthos, as well as a few sticks. Some trachees up front here, along with some more acanthophilias there. Another chalice, another couple of chalice colonies there, and a nice Gani colony with some Scenarinas that were a little bit smaller. In this tank were some SPS, some bird's nests, as well as some Stylistinellas, some Leptostraeas, some Leptoceras, some Favites, a lot of nice chunky pieces that were really well encrusted on the plug. You can see some pincushion and carpet mushrooms up front there. In this tank were some trachees, as well as some Ganis, nice leather colony, some acans, some mushrooms, a nice master torch in the back there, along with some Duncans, some acan mini colonies, some more Holy Grail torches, and of course even more trachees and acanthos, some Indophilias as well. I really like this one with the green coloration. Some acan colonies, some more gold torches, a few more acans, and you can see that massive Micromusa acan colony in the back, as well as this was definitely my favorite piece at the booth. This plate coral was absolutely ginormous. It was at least 12 inches across, and the coloration on it was also spectacular. It's technically a tongue coral, which is basically a plate coral, just a little bit longer, more oblong. But that piece was definitely really special, and it was only $600, which I think is an absolute steal for a piece that big. There were some zoas on that rack and some anemones here with some really nice coloration to them. They also had some acroporas up here on this rack that were nice and encrusted. All of them were basically covering the entire plug, which is really great to see on acroporas, especially at a show. There were also some hammer and frog spawn bouquets here, where there's a nice mixture and kind of like an instant garden, so you can get a nice mix of colors really quickly. He had some individual hammers here, as well as some individual frog spawns up front here, and even more acroporas, some Postulopora, a few more zoas, and some birds' nests. These hammers had some really nice gold coloration to them. And these pipe organs, which were really nice neon green. Next up is Tampa Bay Saltwater. If you are looking for live rock, you've probably heard of these guys. They have a live rock farm out in Tampa Bay, and they actually grab rock directly from the ocean that they put out there. And this stuff is full of all kinds of really neat critters. You can see there's some different macroalgae and pretty cool different mussels. You can even get clams, all kinds of really cool stuff here. They actually picked up some rocks for me and kind of showed me the different stuff in there that you can see and possibly get when you order their live rock. You can see here there was some macroalgae, some sponges, and even some different critters on there. They have some of the best live rock that you can buy, and it is full of all kinds of stuff. You can see this one had a really cool sponge on it with some nice coloration, and of course, because it's live rock, it is covered in coralline. All these rocks were super purple. They even had some blue sponge on it, which is really cool and unique to see. This stuff is great if you're either trying to start a new tank or you're trying to put together like a refugium or something like that. You can see this one had some pretty cool macroalgae on it, but I do recommend you taking precautions with this because there can be pests on it, because it is in the ocean where there are a lot of different pests that even sometimes we won't run into in the aquarium hobby. They had a couple of really cool display tanks. You can see this little mini tank from PNW Customs with Little Rock and some Caulerpa in it. And then this little display here, all of the stuff in here was all just from the live rock. So you can see there's some blue sponges, some red sponges, some macroalgae, a lot of really cool, unique stuff that you can really only find with live rock. You can see there is some sargassum seaweed there, as well as some orange sponges, some nice different actually calcifying macroalgae, which is unique to see. They actually build a skeleton similar to corals, and this rock is covered in coralline and sponges, as I said, which is really cool to see, and definitely some unique stuff there. Next up, we have Knockout Corals. They are located in Louisiana, and they were started actually during 2020. They've been doing shows for about 4 years now. They are run by Jonathan and Dustin, and they specialize in LPS and Euphilia, but as you can see, they also had some really cool looking rock flowers. In this tank was some different corals. You can see some zoas, some cyphastrias, some bird's nests, some clove polyps, and again, starting at $20, there's some really great deals. They also had some Gonioporas, some Montoporas, some leathers. You can see there's some Favites, some mushrooms, some rainbow montifrags, some trumpets, some Leptoceras, some more mushrooms in the back here. as well as a nice Christmas tree worm rock there. Some more leathers over here, as well as some acan echinatas. Some really cool and unique pieces. This tank was full of acans. You can see some larger colonies on the back and some frags up front. There were also some chalices and some montes in the back there, along with some mini colonies on the right side here. Some nice coloration to those acans. Some more acan colonies, as well as some mushrooms and some chalices and some plate corals in the back here. Nice variety of those. A nice big fat Pictinia and chalice, as well as some Blastos with some unique coloration to them, and some Duncans. Some hammers in this rack with some nice coloration, a nice mix. There was even more hammers in the back there, and some really good prices. There was also some frog spawns on this right side here, and even more on the rack to the right. You can see there's some purples, greens, even some golds. You also had some torches up front here, as well as some more of the standard ones in the back, and starting at just 40 bucks. Such a great price. Really enjoyed this show and had a great time filming here. It was really fun, and Knockout Corals also does something pretty unique with these duckies that a lot of people enjoy. It's basically you pay 20 bucks for a ducky, and then you grab it, and there's a number underneath, and that number lets you pick out a coral from the tank. As you can see, they all have different numbers underneath, so that determines the value of the coral that you get, and it ranges from anywhere from 20 bucks all the way up to a couple $100 worth of coral. So it's a really fun game that a lot of people like to try out, and it's something unique to add to the shows that makes it a little more than just going around and picking out corals like you would at a normal coral store. It makes it a little bit more of a fun event. And next up is Top Shelf Aquatics. They're definitely one of the biggest names in the game, and they had a couple of booths actually. So this was one of their booths. They had a lot of different corals. They grow out a lot of their corals, so as you can see, a lot of them are nice and chunky, really well encrusted, and there was quite a few varieties. They actually turned the flow off for us, which was nice to see. Some vendors, I guess, didn't really care about the filming, but it's nice to see that they turned off the flow for us so we could get you guys a better view of the corals. All kinds of different pieces here, SPS, LPS, softies. They have a ton of different corals that they farm out, and a massive farm facility that's really unique. They had some pretty cool pieces in this tank, some Diablo Diasarius, some Bernardoporas, a nice chunky clove polyp colony there, as well as some acans, some dragon's breath, and this really cool mushroom, which was probably my favorite mushroom of the entire show. This one was kind of freaky and had some really cool, unique coloration to it. It was like a green with pinkish purple tips. In the next tank here were some of their Euphyllia, so you can see some torches, some frog spawns, some hammers, a nice mix there of different colors and varieties. And then one of the things that they're definitely known for is their Acroporas, and they brought a lot of their own grown out pieces that they have over there at the farm. They have a massive facility with thousands and thousands of gallons. You can see they had some Wilsonized, some Acanthophyllias, some Hydnophora colony in the back there, as well as some chunkier sticks. This Symphilia, which was really cool, absolutely gorgeous piece. Nice grafted Monty colony there, and some anemones on this left side here with some unique coloration to them. But my favorite coral at their booth was definitely this Symphilia. It's just a unique piece. You don't see too many Symphilias, and this piece had incredible coloration. Yellows, greens, blues, pink, a true rainbow coral that definitely doesn't get the all the attention it deserves. Next up is our final booth, and we had to end with the showrunners here, Worldwide Corals. They definitely have the biggest facility in the country for corals. You can see they've got a bunch of mushrooms, unique looking anemone back there. They had some soft corals up here, some clove polyps, some daisy polyps, and some green star and black star polyps. They had some of their Acroporas here on this rack. Some nice chunky frags there. They definitely had a ton of corals here. They had a massive booth with even a couple couches. Really nice. And I just want to say, as we're finishing up here, that I had a really great time at the show, and I appreciate Worldwide Corals for putting it on. I've been going here for about 6 years now and have a great time every year. Every year it gets better, more vendors and more stuff, more different corals, and it's always really fun to see. I definitely recommend checking out Reef-A-Palooza Orlando. It's by far my favorite show, and I've been to quite a few at this point. Even if you're not looking to buy a particular coral, usually there's something you can find there, and they definitely are always tons of people to talk to and meet, and have a really great time. They even brought this display from their store that I had seen the day before at their shop. This one had a lot of softies in it, some zinnias, some mushrooms, a lot of leathers, some GSP on the back there, really well grown in, and definitely a nice display tank. This tank also had some Montiporas, some Cyphastrias, some Acros, a really interesting mix of corals here. And this rack was full of some hammers, some Montes, some mushrooms, some grafted Cyphastrias, some Hydnophoras, and this rack had some more similar corals, some Fabias, and at 30 bucks you can get a hammer. That's some pretty great deals, and some Montes in the back there. They even had a $20 section, which is something that most people probably didn't think they would see from Worldwide Corals, but they even had some really great deals over at their booth.
All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed part 2 of our tour of Reef-A-Palooza Orlando 2024. This was a really cool show to go through and see all the corals at. And if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like below, comment down below what your favorite coral was, and make sure to subscribe so you guys stay up to date with all of our upcoming videos. We do a lot of different show tours for all the shows we go to, as well as videos about our store here and all kinds of different care videos and stuff like that. So make sure you guys are staying tuned to keep up to date with all of the new content we're posting.